Today, the message that I'm going to be speaking is not written by me. It's written by Senor Mauricio Quintero, all the way from El Salvador. And it's a beautiful message, and I'm looking forward to reading it to you. It's from Parashah Re'eh, and he's entitled it, Do We Have Eyes? Well, let's use them. This week's portion, Re'eh, describes various topics that are related to sight, to seeing. In other words, perceiving and correctly interpreting the light waves that we receive. Remember, Re'eh means to see. According to modern science, vision occurs when light is processed by the eye, but then interpreted by the brain. This cognitive process involving the perception and interpretation of our environment and observed reality really made me think as I was studying this portion. According to Yochanan, the Borei Olam, the eternal God, is light, and there is no darkness in him, which begs the question, how do I process the light of the Borei Olam? Well, our portion begins with God showing us the two options for all our decisions, blessings and curses. Then Moshe gives us various instructions regarding places of worship in chapter 12, verses 1 to 28. This is followed by the commandments against idolatry from verse 29 to 13:19. He then develops the theme of self-mutilation, how to handle mourning. Our diet, that's not mourning like night, it's mourning with a U. Our diet, including the limits of what we can or cannot eat, how we approach our God, rules on tithing, on how we should handle the forgiveness of debts, about the release and treatment of Hebrew slaves, about the firstborn male, the Bechor. And at the end, Moshe reminds the people of the sacrifices they are to offer during the three pilgrim festivals, the Shalosh Regalim. These are Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, when the Israelites were to go up to Jerusalem to the temple to honor our God and to bring our tithes and offerings. But today, I would like to focus on the first verse, which develops the flow for the remainder of the parashah. It says, See, I am setting before you this day the blessing and the curse. The blessing if you will obey the commandments of Yud He Vav He, your God, which I am commanding you this day, and the curse if you do not obey the commandments of Yud He Vav He, your God, but turn aside from the way that I command you today, following other gods that you have not known. Taken from Devarim, Deuteronomy 11, 26 to 28. He then wrote it in Hebrew, which I will send out to you later, but I won't read it today. First, see is such a broad verb to which we can allot many more meanings, such as to observe, to look, to analyze, interpret, perceive, attend to search, inquire, consider, to fix our attention on something, to be deliberately aware, to focus, to think, to judge, to care, to support, to defend, and to register. All this from one verb, to see. It is, in short, using a physical sense to interpret our reality. If we don't see, then we cannot recognize whether we are living within a blessing or a curse. Now, seeing is exclusive to each individual. For example, in a scene or a drawing, my eyes may interpret one color while someone else might see something completely different. I remember that we were once sent a drawing of a shoe. It's incredible. The same picture of the shoe on the cell phone was seen by some as whitish pink, while others, including myself, saw it in turquoise and grayish tones. The difference in perception of the color occurred due to an effect called color constancy, which in short is how our brain interprets visible light waves. For this reason, the Borei Olam begins this portion by directing us to see according to the capacity that he has given us. We cannot see what others see. Rather, we must each focus on what we can see and how we each interpret it. To see implies an additional effort to stop, to consider, and then to meditate upon it. Have you ever sat down simply to look at a tree or a sunset or an insect or yourself in a mirror? In order to see, we must stop. And when we do, we begin to see a universe within that we would not even notice if we were driving past it 90 miles or 90 kilometers per hour. Second, I set before you. I set. God places the responsibility on you. No one is more responsible than me for how I see and perceive my reality. If we have the right to decide, we must assume responsibility for our decisions. Third, before you, I set before you, implies that actions which happen to the individual affect the entire community. Every action that I decide to do or not to do will affect my environment. We are all interconnected beings. In this case, the blessings and curses affect us individually, but they also affect the whole, the collective. Fourth, today, I set before you today, Hayom, not yesterday, not tomorrow. This is the God of starting over. Oh, that's so wonderful. Or as our Ranebi constantly reminded us, he is the God of beginning again. Our God allows our present decisions and actions to reverse past ones, so we can focus on now, on the now, because tomorrow is uncertain. In every moment, we must and we can choose. Let's imagine that we're struggling with some addiction. We live one moment at a time. If 5 minutes ago, we decided to do something wrong and went and bought a substance that would harm us, within the next 5 minutes, we can still choose to throw it away. Well, we can apply this same concept to an internal, continuous present. What matters is today. No matter what our past mistake is, we can still rectify it today. Today is the time to be reborn, to start over, to get up, and to abandon, to get rid of, to turn away from whatever would do us harm today. Fifth, the blessing and the curse. If we read the verses well, we will see that blessing is tantamount to obeying, and the curse to disobeying. The consequences are clear and expounded upon in the Torah. We have a choice. This implies the greatest gift of God to us, bechira chofshit, free will, the ability to decide. Deciding is a voluntary, personal, and present action. Even if we decide to stop making decisions, this too is a choice. It seems that in this life, we must constantly decide, as we read in the Torah, where it says that we must choose what and how to eat, who our God will be, in what place we will honor God, what kind of offering we will present before the Creator, who is a false prophet and who is not, and how we manage God's provision for us, which involves tithing to the poor, the needy, the widow, and the orphan. Also, how to forgive debts in the sabbatical year, how we should be seen by the Eternal and travel to him during the Shalosh Regalim, his 3 pilgrim festivals. The right decision will be born out of the action of seeing correctly. If we do not see, then we will not be able to do justice, as the next portion, Shoftim, will teach us. This week's Haftorah portion invites us to break paradigms, which would be impossible to break if we do not see. For example, how can I buy money? How can I buy without money? It's an act of bartering, or without payment at all. We read in Isaiah 55, 1 and 2. Because the price with which it is bought takes effort, and effort involves obedience. Many people today, as it was in the Middle Ages, prefer to pay for a place in heaven through papal bulls or giving alms as offerings to buy God. God doesn't need our money. For him to be pleased, he asks us for something that will cost us, even if it has no measurable economic value, and that is obedience. So we must look beyond our eyes and our logic in order to move forward in our lives. I was recently questioned about why I was so generous with poor people. I know that the Torah commands us to help the widow, the orphan, and the poor. I told them, until now, I've never seen anyone who has become poor after giving to others. These words were enough to cause absolute silence in those who asked me. However, even though they had more money than I have, they still did not want to pay the price of obedience. My prayer for this Shabbat is that the eternal God opens our eyes in the same way that he opened Gehazi's eyes when asked by the prophet Elisha. But Gehazi could not move forward because he preferred material wealth. Let us ask the Borei Olam to expand our spectrum and visual field. Psalms 119, 18-19 says, "Open my eyes so that I may contemplate the wonders of your Torah. On this earth, I am a foreigner. Do not hide your mitzvot, your commandments, from me." And Tehillim 36, 8-10 says, "They are satisfied with the abundance of your house. You give them to drink in the river of your delights, because in you is the source of light, and in your light we can see the light." Extend your love to those who know you, and your justice to those with a sincere heart. Let's ask ourselves these questions. Do we dare to see? Can we decide to stop in order to see? Do we analyze and meditate upon what we see? And does seeing help us make correct decisions? May the Borei Olam open our physical and spiritual eyes and our conscience to make good decisions. Shabbat Shalom.